My father stood up at the head of the long mahogany table, raising his heavy bourbon glass toward the crystal chandelier. 100 of Charlotte's wealthiest elites fell completely silent, their expensive silverware resting perfectly on porcelain plates. He smiled warmly at my older sister, Christina, and proudly toasted her $1.5 million corporate law bonus. The room erupted in polite, admiring applause. Then, his eyes shifted down the length of the table to me. The warmth vanished from his face instantly, replaced by a cold, dead stare. He cleared his throat, ensuring the entire room was listening, and announced to the smiling crowd that as for his youngest daughter, her cheap career choices were her weight to carry. Not his. The entire private dining room broke into cruel, mocking laughter. I swallowed the sharp lump in my throat and forced my lips into a slow, deliberate smile. I kept my eyes locked on the massive flat-screen television hanging above the restaurant bar. My heart hammered a steady, calm rhythm against my ribs. I knew the truth. In exactly 10 seconds. The national broadcast was going to cut to a breaking news alert. And that single alert was going to destroy his entire world. 3 days earlier, the air in my parents' colonial living room was thick with the suffocating scent of my mother's expensive lavender candles. I stood by the marble fireplace, holding out a thick, cream-colored envelope. The official gold seal of the United States Department of Education caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the bay windows. It was a formal invitation to the National Teacher of the Year Awards Gala in Washington. A once-in-a-lifetime honor. My mother, Courtney, barely glanced at the heavy parchment before taking a slow sip of her chilled Chardonnay. Christina snatched the envelope from my hand, scanning the formal typography before tossing it onto the glass coffee table like a piece of junk mail. She crossed her arms, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light, and scoffed loudly. She asked if I seriously expected them to fly all the way to Washington for a glorified participation trophy. She reminded me that she was making senior partner this week, and she had already booked the country club for her massive celebration dinner on that exact same night. My father stepped into the room, adjusting his silk tie with sharp, impatient movements. He pointed a rigid finger directly at my chest. He declared that my sister brought actual prestige and real money to the family name. He issued a brutal ultimatum. I was going to cancel my little trip to Washington. I was going to stay in Charlotte, coordinate the caterers, and manage the waitstaff for Christina's party. He looked me up and down with sheer disgust, stating that with my pathetic $48,000 salary, nobody at my little middle school was going to care if I missed a few days of babysitting. He told me I owed my sister this much. The disrespect hit me like a physical blow, knocking the breath completely out of my lungs. For 32 years, I played the obedient scapegoat. I chased their approval, absorbing their constant insults, hoping that one day they would look at me and see my value. That lifelong delusion shattered into dust the moment he demanded I become my sister's unpaid servant. I looked at the gold seal on the envelope lying abandoned on the table. Then at the 3 people who shared my blood. I picked up my leather tote bag in absolute silence. My father snapped at me, his face flushing deep red, demanding to know where I was going. He warned me that if I walked out that front door, I should not bother coming back. I reached for the brass doorknob. The cold metal grounded my racing pulse. The heavy click of the deadbolt sliding into place behind me was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I walked to my car, pulled out my phone, and permanently blocked all 3 of their numbers. 72 hours later, I stood in the grand, sweeping foyer of the Kennedy Center in Washington. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden glow over a sea of senators, educational dignitaries, and renowned journalists. Women in elegant evening gowns and men in sharp tuxedos milled about, discussing national policy. Standing right beside me was my grandmother, Whitney Brooks, a legendary former superintendent. She commanded immense respect without needing to say a single word. She was the one who had secretly submitted my nomination months ago, compiling years of my student success stories into a dossier of undeniable proof. She squeezed my hand, her silver rings cool against my skin, and whispered that tonight, the world was finally going to see me, 300 miles away. My family sat entirely oblivious in Charlotte's most exclusive, reservation-only steakhouse. Christina was holding court at the head table, wearing a designer silk dress. Sitting directly to her right was her law firm's most prized acquisition, a brilliant, silver-haired managing director of a massive national education foundation. His organization was preparing to sign a multi-million-dollar retainer with Christina's law firm on Monday morning. Christina leaned in, swirling her Cabernet, desperate to impress him with her ruthless corporate mindset. She wanted to prove she belonged to the untouchable elite class. She laughed loudly, waving her manicured hand dismissively over her plate. She told the director that people who go into teaching are just lazy, her voice carrying over the clinking silverware and soft jazz music. She called the profession a holding pen for weak people who lack the drive to survive in the real corporate world. She sneered, calling it pathetic that teachers demand a paycheck just for babysitting other people's problems. Christina was so utterly consumed by her own arrogance. She completely failed to do her background research. She never bothered to learn that the wealthy, silver-haired director sitting next to her was the proud son of 2 lifelong public school teachers. The director set his heavy crystal glass down on the table. The ice clinked sharply. His expression froze into a mask of pure, unadulterated disgust. Back in Washington, the auditorium lights dimmed to a dramatic low. The murmurs died down instantly as the United States Secretary of Education stepped up to the massive mahogany podium. Millions of Americans were watching the live broadcast from their living rooms. Back at the Charlotte Steakhouse, the silver-haired director's phone buzzed aggressively against the white linen tablecloth. Text after text flooded his screen from his colleagues and board members in the education sector. He pulled his reading glasses from his breast pocket, frowning at the notifications, and looked up at the massive television screens above the restaurant bar. The channel was locked on the national news network. The breaking news banner flashed brilliant red across the bottom of the screen. I stepped into the blinding stage lights of the Kennedy Center. The applause from 2,000 people sounded like a physical wave crashing over my body. As I gripped the heavy glass trophy, the camera zoomed in tight on my face, broadcasting my image across the country. I looked directly into the camera lens. I spoke into the microphone, my voice echoing through the massive hall, stating that growing up, I was constantly told my choices were cheap. I was told I was a burden. My words flowed through the television speakers in Charlotte, cutting straight through the ambient noise of the steakhouse. My father's face went completely white. The memory of his cruel insult from just moments ago hung in the air above their table like toxic smoke. I continued my speech, my voice gaining unwavering strength. I spoke about the children in my classroom, the ones who come to school hungry, the ones who wear the exact same clothes 3 days in a row, the ones who have been told by society that they will never amount to anything. I declared that they are not burdens, but our future. I told the world that if spending my entire life fighting for those forgotten children makes me a lowly teacher, then I will wear that title like a crown. The Washington crowd erupted. 2,000 people rose to their feet in a thunderous, deafening standing ovation. In Charlotte, the steakhouse was dead silent. The silver-haired director slowly turned his head away from the television screen and locked eyes with my sister. The blood had completely drained from Christina's face. Her jaw hung slack, her eyes wide with mounting horror. The director asked if the woman on the screen was her sister. His voice was terrifyingly calm, carrying a weight that made the surrounding tables freeze. Christina stammered, her hands trembling so violently she knocked over her expensive wine glass. Dark red liquid spread across the pristine white tablecloth like a fresh wound. The director did not wait for her pathetic, scrambling excuse. He stood up, tossing his linen napkin onto the ruined table. He spoke with sharp, precise authority, stating that his board of directors was meeting on Monday morning. He announced that his very first motion would be to pull their entire retainer from her law firm. He promised to personally call her managing partner and explain exactly why his foundation refuses to do business with a lawyer who publicly degrades the finest, most dedicated educators in the country. He walked away from the table without looking back. The neighboring tables, filled with my father's wealthy business associates and country club peers, stared at my family in pure disgust. The social execution was absolute, public, and undeniable, but true narcissists do not feel remorse when they are caught. They only feel rage, facing a massive demotion and a permanently ruined reputation. Christina refused to accept defeat. 2 weeks later, desperate to rewrite the narrative and save her crumbling career, she launched a coward's counterattack. She drafted a highly defamatory, anonymous email accusing me of emotionally abusing my middle school students. She detailed entirely fabricated stories, hoping to trigger a state investigation and strip me of my teaching license. She reasoned that if she could prove I was a fraud, she could tell her bosses the director was wrong to defend me. She hit send, confident she had hidden her tracks like a mastermind. She forgot one crucial, fatal detail. She sent the email using her law firm's internal corporate wireless network. My grandmother Whitney did not need magic. And she certainly did not need to hire a private investigator. She simply possessed decades of high-level connections and an ironclad understanding of the law. The moment the fake complaint crossed the district superintendent's desk, Whitney made a single phone call to the managing partner of Christina's law firm. He was a prominent lawyer she had personally mentored 20 years ago. She did not ask for a favor. She delivered a devastating legal threat. Whitney told him to check his firewall's outgoing traffic at 9:42 yesterday morning. Her tone was colder than winter ice. She informed him that if that defamatory IP address traced back to his corporate network, his entire firm was facing a massive civil liability lawsuit for defaming a federal award winner. Terrified of a catastrophic public relations nightmare and a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, the partner ordered an immediate forensic audit of the IT department. The truth took exactly 10 minutes to uncover. The firm's security guards escorted Christina out of her corner office before lunch. They stripped her of her security badge, handed her personal belongings in a cheap cardboard box, and threw her out onto the downtown pavement. The firm immediately filed a formal ethics grievance against her with the State Bar Association for utilizing corporate assets to commit malicious defamation. My father and mother found themselves completely isolated. Their country club friends stopped returning their calls. Dinner invitations vanished into thin air. The elite society they worshipped had expelled them entirely, treating them like a contagious disease. My phone lit up constantly with their desperate calls and rambling voicemails, begging for just one chance to explain, pleading for me to publicly forgive them so they could save face. I sat at my wooden desk in my classroom, watching their names flash across the cracked screen. I smiled, slid the phone into the bottom drawer, and walked to the chalkboard. They were finally experiencing the suffocating, agonizing silence they had subjected me to for 3 decades. 3 months later, the dust had completely settled. The legal and financial consequences were absolute, swift, and devastating. The State Bar Association suspended Christina's license to practice law for a minimum of 2 years, citing severe professional misconduct and ethical violations. Without her massive corporate salary and annual bonuses, she was forced to vacate her luxury downtown penthouse. The bank foreclosed on the property exactly 1 month later. My parents, utterly humiliated and financially strained from trying to cover Christina's mounting legal debts, had to put their beloved colonial estate on the market. They downsized to a small, unremarkable condominium on the noisy outskirts of the city. The country club formally revoked their membership, sending the notice via certified mail. They lost their money, their status, their pride, and their golden child. They lost absolutely everything they ever valued. A few weeks ago, I received a thick, handwritten letter in the mail. The return address belonged to my mother. I stood in the kitchen of my new, sunlit apartment, tracing the familiar curves of her handwriting with my thumb. I knew exactly what the pages inside contained. It would be a masterclass in emotional manipulation. There would be teardrops intentionally smeared across the ink. There would be desperate pleas reminding me that we share the same blood, that she is still my mother, that family always forgives family. She would try to convince me that the punishment had gone far enough, that they were suffering terribly, and that it was my moral obligation to fix the broken pieces of our family tree. I did not open the envelope. I did not read a single manipulative word. I walked over to the stainless steel trash can, dropped the unopened letter inside, and went back to brewing my morning coffee. I realized in that quiet, peaceful morning that anger is a temporary visitor, but indifference is a permanent resident. For years, I believed that if I just worked harder, if I just loved them more, if I just proved my unwavering worth, they would magically transform into the loving family I desperately deserved. But narcissistic families do not operate on love or mutual respect. They operate purely on utility. They view their children as nothing more than extensions of their own fragile egos, mirrors designed exclusively to reflect their greatness back at them. The exact moment you stop reflecting what they want to see, the moment you develop your own independent identity, you become a massive threat. My sister used my modest career to make her wealth feel more significant. My father used my quiet obedience to make his authority feel absolute. They did not hate me. It was actually much worse than that. They did not see me as a human being at all. I was just a convenient prop in their grand theatrical production of a perfect, wealthy, untouchable family. Stepping away from the people who share your DNA is one of the most agonizing, unnatural decisions a human being can ever make. Society conditions us from birth to believe that blood is an unbreakable covenant. We are constantly bombarded with toxic slogans, insisting that family is everything, that you must always forgive, that you only get one mother and one father in this life. But what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you become the very monsters you need protection from? What happens when the hands that should hold you up are the ones actively holding your head underwater? You have to learn to swim away. You have to learn to breathe on your own, even if it hurts your lungs at first. Through this grueling, transformative journey, I have learned 3 fundamental truths about surviving toxic relationships. 3 rules that I now carry with me every single day like a heavy iron shield. Rule number 1. Blood does not make you family. Respect, loyalty, and consistent kindness make you family. DNA is nothing more than a random biological coincidence. It is a starting point, not a mandatory life sentence. Do not spend your one precious life watering dead plants just because you happen to be planted in the exact same garden. You are allowed to uproot yourself. You are allowed to find fertile soil. Today, my real family is the fierce grandmother who saw my massive potential when everyone else saw a failure. My family is the sprawling network of passionate, underpaid, exhausted teachers who show up every single day to change the trajectory of broken lives. My family is the chosen circle of loyal friends who celebrate my victories without a single shadow of jealousy in their eyes. Rule number 2. Silence is the most devastating, highly effective revenge you can ever exact upon a narcissist. When you are unfairly attacked, your initial human instinct is to fight back. You want to scream at the top of your lungs. You want to present logical evidence. You want to force them to look in the mirror and admit they are wrong. But arguing with a narcissist is exactly like screaming into a Category 5 hurricane. It only exhausts you. And it gives them exactly what they relentlessly crave. Attention. They want you angry. Because an angry victim is an engaged victim. By walking away. By refusing to explain yourself. By simply dropping their desperate letters in the trash unread. You starve them of their oxygen. You do not need to prove your intrinsic worth to people who are entirely committed to misunderstanding you. Leave them alone in the dark with their own miserable thoughts. Let their own hubris, their own paranoia, and their own toxic choices bury them alive. Rule number 3. Your immense value is never, ever determined by the people who are too blind to see it. For over 3 decades, I let my father's bank account dictate my self-esteem. I let my sister's corporate titles make me feel incredibly small and insignificant. I measured my worth using a completely broken ruler. The day I stood on that brightly lit stage in Washington, holding a heavy crystal trophy, I did not suddenly become valuable. I was valuable all along. I was valuable when I was wiping down dirty whiteboards late on a Friday afternoon while the rest of the world was at happy hour. I was valuable when I was quietly buying winter coats for shivering students out of my own meager paycheck. The national award did not change my worth. It simply illuminated it for a world that was finally paying attention. If you are stuck in a toxic environment where your bright light is constantly being dimmed by insecure people, stop apologizing for shining. Pack up your light and take it somewhere else. Today, the cracked screen of my phone is finally fixed. My contact list is incredibly small, but it is completely safe. I spend my quiet evenings planning creative lessons, writing glowing college recommendations for bright, ambitious students, and sitting on my small balcony watching the city lights flicker in the distance. There is no yelling. There are no cruel ultimatums. There are no fancy steakhouse dinners where I have to swallow my pride just to earn a temporary seat at their table. My table is small, but everyone sitting at it loves me for exactly who I am. If you are watching this, and you are exhausted to your very bones from trying to earn the love of people who treat you like a permanent afterthought, I need you to hear this truth. You have full permission to walk away. You have permission to drop the heavy rope in a tug-of-war you were never designed to win. It will hurt at first. It will feel terrifying and lonely. But the profound peace waiting for you on the other side of that door is worth more than all the gold in the world. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic blood to save yourself? Have you ever chosen your own dignity over the familiar comfort of pain? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one of them, because I know what it takes to survive. Because sometimes, giving up on the people who repeatedly hurt you is exactly where your real life finally begins.